Well, with us now is Baron Mandelson, the political prince of darkness who helped create New Labour and whose career has encompassed spells around the cabinet table in several departments, including business and Northern Ireland. Do you think Ed Miliband is the best leader your party could have?
In my view, he is the leader we have and therefore the leader I support, and somebody who I believe is capable of leading the party to victory.
The best possible leader?
Well, let me, if you don't mind, just step out of the way you framed this. We have a year to go between now and the election. In the coming days and weeks and months, the Labour Party will be bringing forward a whole series of quite forward-looking policies. Having policies, though, without those being drawn together into a convincing and vivid narrative, a story about yourself, who you are, what you stand for, what you're going to do for people in the country, is not enough. You've really got to put all this, draw it all together, connect the policies, link them back to the leader, and give people a real sense of where you're going and what you're going to do.
Why is he so much worse a leader than Tony Blair?
He's a different leader, Jeremy. I mean, Tony Blair was consciously moving the Labour Party to the centre ground, away from ideology, away from the either-or of British politics. The either you are sort of for the poor or you're for the rich, or either for the person who works on the factory shop floor or you're for the executive floor in the boardroom. You're either for Britain or for Europe. What Tony Blair did was to replace either or with and he produced a different form of consensual politics that appealed right across the spectrum of the centre ground, leading it from the left, but consciously making that appeal across the centre ground. Now, Ed Miliband is choosing a different course. I mean, what people what people around him would say is that what he needs to do, or what he is doing for the Labour Party and the left, is what Mrs. Thatcher did for the right in the 1970s and the 80s.
If that's the case, why do 43% of Labour voters, according to the latest poll, want to see a change of leader?
Bring these people on and ask them, Jeremy. I haven't been asked by any opinion pollster.
You're a man who knows what's going on in politics.
What I know is going on is that what Ed is trying to do is approach politics in a rather different way from the way in which Tony Blair and New Labour approached it.
Do you think it's working?
It may work. It may well be successful. And I would say to you, that electoral arithmetic is probably on his side.
Do you think that it would be more effective were he seen to be more pro-business?
I think that he has confused the party's message to business. I think that what he needs to do is to embrace that a model of a market-based economy where we are supporting business success, but where we also want to see a socially inclusive society with principles of social justice, where we're creating opportunities for people and leaning against inequalities in society in everything we do.
How has he muddled the message?
Just make the point. He places a great deal of emphasis on the last of those positions, the social justice, the fairness, the leaning against inequality. And I think that's absolutely right for a Labour leader to do so. But he also has to balance that with an explanation of how we're going to bring about economic growth, how we're going to create jobs, and how we're going to create conditions in Britain for business to grow and thrive.
Which he hasn't done yet.
Which he has a year to do.
Which he hasn't done yet, then.
Which he has a year to do.
When you look at the way that people in this country regard politics, and there's a profound disenchantment, I'm sure you'd agree, a profound disenchantment with politics and with politicians. Do you accept any of the blame for that?
Well, I think the condition of politics in Britain today is much weaker than it was 25 years ago. I think politicians are trusted less.
Before you?
Well, the politicians are trusted less, that's true. People vote less. They support the mainstream parties less than they did 25 years ago, and the institutions of central and local government are not held in such high esteem. But the reason for that, Jeremy, I would say, is to do with the profound impact of economic and social changes on our country.
So you don't accept any responsibility for that?
Well, I'm not quite sure what charge you're levelling at me.
The charge is that you got to work on the way that politics happened in this country. You put an emphasis upon spin, you put an emphasis upon presentation, you buckled down a really tight control on how the parties operated, and the consequence of that is that people are disenchanted because the stock response has become, you can't trust politicians.
Well, I'm not going to apologise to you or anyone else for making the Labour Party more presentable and putting it in a better light. But I never made the mistake of confusing good communications and good policies. To me, you can only have good communications flowing from good policies. You have to have a very real sense of what you stand for and what you're going to do for the country. And no number of photo opportunities or sound bites, however effective and attractive, will substitute for that sense of mission that a political party has got to convey to the public.
The appeal of someone like Nigel Farage is that he's not part of a mainstream party, isn't it?
I think it is, because you have a government which isn't popular, and an opposition which is not strong enough for the reasons that I've expressed, but which I believe the opposition has a year to put right. And so even though many of the people who voted for UKIP the other week, polled subsequently, say they neither like nor agree with UKIP, nonetheless voted for Nigel Farage in order to send a message to the main parties. And it's one they've got to receive and respond to. There's no doubt at all about that.
How much do you think that public opposition to politics, politicians, the political process, is to do with the fact that your friends in government took us into that war in Iraq?
I think Iraq does haunt British politics. It's not yet behind us. And I know that many people in the country believe that when the invasion and occupation of Iraq took place, somehow, the gates of hell were raised to release all that civil strife and all that carnage. And I know that there are people who believe that we are sowing, in a sense, what we reaped. I don't happen to believe it's as simple as that. And as a Labour Member of Parliament, who followed his government's lead at the time and voted for it, I'm not now going to join Tony Blair's chorus of critics.
So you still think it was the right decision?
I think that on reflection you could judge that it was a mistake, but this is the crucial point I would make to you. If it was a mistake, it was a mistake honestly made. I do not believe that either Tony Blair or the government as a whole, as some people claim, took the country to war on a lie. I think that's unacceptable. I don't think it's true.
But Tony Blair was saying even this week that it was still the right thing to do. I mean, do you think he's gone a bit nuts?
No, I do not think he's gone a bit nuts, and I think he's fully entitled to defend his position. I also happen to think he's right to say that whereas 25 years ago, when you started on this programme, we had the sort of the relative certainties of the Cold War to deal with, we now have the terrible uncertainties of jihadism, of radical Islam. He is right to point up the dangers of that, and he's right to galvanise people and mobilise people to take the action, to adopt the policies to deal with it.
Peter Mandelson, thanks very much.
Thank you.